Hello everyone, welcome to the completion report assignment. Um, this video is going to walk you through the assignment guidelines, explain how to do this, and give you some tips and tricks on how to get this done relatively quickly. If you take a look at the course calendar, I'm making this video on Sunday night, the 31st, and so we've got 1 week before the draft of the completion report is due. Um, if you look at the grand scheme of the course, we really don't have that much more time left. And so once we complete the completion report, ironically, then basically what we do for the rest of the semester is we work on a WordPress site, which if you're not familiar with WordPress, it's really not that big of a deal. It's pretty easy to do once you get the hang of it. So we develop a WordPress site, and then we do a sort of final presentation, which really isn't a live presentation, but it's a recorded one, and again, pretty easy to figure out. So really, I don't want to say that we're in wrap-up mode at this point, but I would definitely say that the most intense um, designing work is probably out of the way, and that probably would have been the usability study that we just completed. So from here on out, you'll see how it works. If you look at the module for the completion report, we've got a typical quiz, chapter 19 in the textbook and the Markle text, your discussion forum to post your first draft, and you'll notice that there is no student example in this module. And that's for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that because the Markle text does give an extensive sample of what a recommendation or completion report looks like. And so that's on page 532, and so you can see that. But also, I don't want you to just basically fill in the blanks with this completion report. I do want to make it yours. And so everybody's is supposed to be a little bit different. We're all going to have the same sections, but the way that we write it is going to be a little different. So take a look at the assignment guidelines, and this will hopefully make a little more sense. Now, at the beginning of the semester, you came up with a research proposal, and that's what pretty much started everything. The research proposal, essentially what it did was identified a need that either you had or college students in general have, and that need could be anything. It could have been organization. It could have been, I don't know how to cite research. It could have been just to communicate with other students, instructors, friends, family, whatever. And then whether or not you realized that you were coming up with a recommendation, and that recommendation was, here's the application that you should use. So for example, um, let's use Evernote as my example. So let's say at the beginning of the semester I came up with my research proposal, and I identified a need, and my need was that today's college student needs a systematic approach to taking and recording and storing notes in a way that's accessible across all devices. And then imagine that I went on and did research on this and found that, it turns out that students who take notes perform significantly better than those who don't. And so therefore, Evernote is a great tool and resource for everyone to use. So what I was doing was I was identifying a need that college students have, and then I was investigating this application called Evernote. And uh, by now, at this point, I've done a job aid on it. I've written instructions for it. I've even performed a usability test with 3 people to determine, is this stuff effective in its use? So um, at this point, we have a little bit of research that we can use. For a recommendation report, you typically write these after you've done what's called primary research. And primary research would be sort of you going into a classroom of students and making sure that they all use Evernote, and then investigating whether or not that actually impacted grades or something like that. Um, We didn't do that. We don't have the time to do that in this class, and we don't have the resources to do that, unfortunately. So the biggest flaw in writing a recommendation report for us is that we didn't do primary research, but we sort of did research because we did a usability test. So here's what you need to do in order to write the actual report. These are all the sections that you need in the report. 11 different sections. And I know it seems like a lot of stuff to do, but the good news is the majority of this stuff you've already written. So we will be sort of compiling a lot of the stuff that we've written and just sort of piecing it together to form this ultimate report. So if you look in the Markle text on page 532, you'll see an example memo. And that we have not written yet, but you can sort of look at it and see what it should include. It's essentially kind of an overview of what the report is. So just take a look at the Markle text and see how to do that. Same thing for the title page. Just format this stuff just how Markle does it in the text. So you'll need a title page, an abstract. Oops. Abstract, we need to write that, but as I say here, that should be written last, probably along with the table of contents. You shouldn't write that first, obviously, for obvious reasons. Same thing for the abstract. This is like the big overview summary of the entire report. So obviously it's hard to do that until you've written the report. So I would do that last. Introduction is in the sample report, and it starts on page 537 in the text on their introduction. For this, I think that you can just take your research proposal, the one that you submitted as the very first assignment that we did, and essentially copy and paste that entire thing into this section. So this section, the introduction section, is the research proposal that you've already done. Now you may have to do some rewording of things just to make it flow a little better. For instance, tenses. So in your research proposal, maybe you said, I'm going to do a usability report. You're going to want to change that to I did a usability report, right? So you're going to have to change it to past tense. But for the most part, that's just a copy and paste section. This next section, the results, this, again, sort of pretty much looks like what you wrote for your usability report, because it just basically describes what were the results of the usability study. Was it well received? Were your documents well received? Did they work well? Were they effective? What did the interviewees have to say about it? So again, this is pretty much in the usability report. You've already written this. You're just going to have to kind of tweak it to make sure it flows in this report. But that is pretty much already written for you. The only thing that you'll have to add to this is I want a figure in this section. And if you look in the Markle text, they've got a bunch of different figures in here. They've got bar charts and pie charts and things like that. Like I said, we didn't do primary research, so you're not going to have really the data that they have. But you can include things like maybe it's just a screenshot of your application, or maybe you did a Wordle. Remember I was talking about Wordle, where you could actually plug in the interview transcript. Just is Wordle.net. And maybe you got one of these things, this is a Wordle. So that could count as a figure. Whatever you want to use there. Basically what I'm looking for is proper formatting for adding a figure into the report. So just make sure you're following how they do that in the example text. Section 7 is the conclusion. And so this is on page 553 in the text. This is just sort of, what have you concluded from all of this after doing the job aid, the instructions, the research in the beginning, and then the usability testing. What have you concluded? And then the last section for your writing is a recommendation. And this is just one paragraph where you can sort of make a recommendation and it can be, it doesn't have to be, well, try and make it somewhat realistic, but it doesn't have to come true, right? So you could say like, um, from here on out, coastal students are going to receive um, a, their own Evernote account along with their student email or something like that. You know, imagine you were a sort of consultant hired to come up with this recommendation as to how to help address this need that these students have. So if the need was they needed to be organized, maybe your recommendation then is, look, I did a usability test. We went through all this research for organizational skills and things, and it turns out that, yeah, Evernote is a great tool for people to use and they should use it. So we recommend all your students use it, right? Um, that's basically it. And then your references section in there, and then appendices A and B, those are actually just what you've already done, your instructions and your job aid. You're going to insert those as appendices. So Appendix A is the set of instructions, and Appendix B is the job aid. So as you can sort of tell already, this is going to be a lengthy report in terms of number of pages. But the good news is you've written, I don't know, 90% of this already. It's just a matter of mainly formatting and making sure everything's in there and everything flows and everything matches the example text from the Markle sample. Here's the rubric, pretty standard rubric that I've been using all along. Basically, just make sure that everything is present. It's in APA format. Um, and really, in terms of APA formatting, to make things really sort of easier on you, I'm just going to say use the Markle text as an ideal model for you to follow. So whatever Markle's doing in that section in his text, that's what I want you to do for yours. So if you look at the title page, the abstract, the memo, all those things, that's the formatting that I want you to use. It's not perfect APA format, it's a little different, but to make things easier and consistent across everybody, I'll just say, just look at Markle. That's what he's doing. Let's just do what he's doing. So, yeah, that's that. So that's the completion report. And again, it sounds like a lot of work, but I think you'll find once you get started with it, it's not really a whole lot of work. It's more or less piecing things together and making it work. So that's the completion report. That's a week from now. That's the April 7th, something like that. What is it, a week from now? Let's see if I can get my date straight here. Yeah, April 7th will be the due date for the first draft. And as I mentioned, we're really starting to wind down, so make sure that you stay on top of it. You stay active on Twitter. Ask questions if you need to. Don't start kind of falling off like most people do around this point in the semester. It's going to start warming up a little bit. We're at the beach. I get it. But just kind of power through this last month or so, and we'll get there. So let me know if you have any questions. Good luck with the completion report, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.